I think that people were sent the story of the Turkey prince, which I suppose most people know in any event. What I'd like to do is not really give a sheer on it, but really to lead a discussion about what people think it is about and how really what it means to us. The Rebbe never told stories because they made nice stories. The Rebbe brought the stories not only just to teach us a lesson, but also that it should have an impact, right? It should have a real impact. And this story is one of them. So let me just go through the story in case people don't remember it exactly. And then if you like, we can discuss how we interpret the story, what's it about, and what it means to each of us. So the Holy Rebbe says, once a king's son went crazy. He thought he was a turkey. He felt it was necessary for him to sit under the table, naked, and he would pull at bits of bread and bones, just like a turkey. None of the doctors could do anything. If you can't hear me, please tell me. Okay, fine. None of the doctors could do anything to help him or to cure him, and they gave up in despair. And the king was very upset, until a wise man came along and he said, I can cure him. And what did he do? He took off all his clothes. He sat down without clothes under the table next to the king's son, and he also ate at the crumbs and bones that would fall down. The prince asked him, who are you and what are you doing here? And the wise man replied, what are you doing here? I'm a turkey, said the prince. I'm also a turkey, said the wise man. And the two of them sat there together for some time until they got used to one another. Then the wise man gave a sign and they threw them shirts. The turkey said to the prince said to the king, the wise man said to the prince, do you think a turkey can't wear a shirt? You can wear a shirt and still be a turkey. And so the two of them put on shirts. After a while he gave another sign and they threw them down some trousers. Again the wise man said, hello. Oh, sorry? Yeah. Here comes the back. Hello. Again the wise man said, do you think if you wear trousers you can't be a turkey? And they put on trousers. One by one they gradually put on all their clothes. Afterwards the wise man gave a sign and they put down human food. The wise man said, do you think if you eat good food you can't be a turkey? You can eat the food and still be a turkey. And so they ate. Then he said to him, do you think a turkey has to sit under the table? You can be a turkey and sit by the table. And this, the Rebbe says, is how the wise man dealt with the prince, and until the end he cured him completely. Okay. Now I've always been intrigued by this story, I must tell you, for years and years and years. And Avram Greenbaum wrote a whole book on this one story. I must tell you, my views on it are slightly different from Avram Greenbaum. That doesn't mean he's right and I'm wrong, or I'm wrong, right and he's wrong, or anything like that. But you can take umpteen interpretations of any of the Rebbe's words. So I would be delightful to hear what people have to say, what they make of the story. Do you know the story, may I ask? Yes? Are you conversant with the story? The ladies? You're not? Okay. So I'd like to know what let's start off by asking the question. We'll throw it open. As I said, I'd like this very much to be in the form of a discussion rather than a shir, to know what it is that people think. First of all, who do we think the king is?
Hashem.
Hashem. Is that the general consensus? Okay. I'm not sure myself, I have to tell you. I think to some degree, yes. But I think one can argue...
He's a father image. Obviously, he's a father.
Yeah, father image. I'm not saying it's not. It's certainly one. But I think each of us is also the king.
Is what?
Each of us is also a king.
Yeah.
And that... So who is the king's son? Who's the prince? Okay, who's the prince? Who's the prince in the story?
I guess we are, in a sense, because some people might go around saying, "Who am I? What am I, Zoker to all these things?"
Who do we think the prince is? And why is he? Okay, so why is he under the table? Set me the scenario. What's going on here? Tell me what's happening in your view. What's happening in the story?
He's acting foolishly.
What?
Does he know that? Does he know he's acting foolishly?
No.
Low self-esteem.
What?
Low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem, okay.
Yeah, low self-esteem.
Feels bad about something, because otherwise he won't be under the table.
Right.
Very low self-esteem.
Does he realize he's under the table?
He thinks it's normal.
He had to go under the table.
He feels more comfortable being a Nebuchadnezzar or something.
Okay.
He feels more comfortable. This he doesn't have to.
I think there's a deeper interpretation to the whole story. That's one way I would look at it. What the Rebbe is talking about is to some degree the whole inyan of creation. That this story typifies the whole of creation by the Ribbono Shel Olam, and the creation of man in particular. In that it's a very much like as the Rebbe brings in a number of his Torahs, that when a person is born into the world, he loses something. He loses something. As soon as a person gets into the material body, and as soon as he or she comes out into the world, right, we lose a direct. There immediately gets a table is set up between us and God. We cease to be just spiritual beings, and we become human beings, right?
Excuse me, is that the story where the child in his mother's stomach is learning Torah? The Malach is learning Torah, and then he forgets
it. Yeah.
Does this go back to the Garden of Eden?
What?
Garden of Eden, because we were spiritual. Adam was spiritual,
right.
And
it's
then
this whole thing. Yeah. So, in a sense, what's happening here is that as soon as we're born, the spiritual connection, the ability to realize that each of us is a prince and a princess because of the direct connection with the Ribbono Shel Olam goes. Right? And we become crazy. Right? Because the whole world is crazy. This is a crazy world. This is a oila mashek. This is a crazy world. When what should be on top is underneath, and what is underneath should be on top. So in truth, I think the prince may well go under the table because he thinks it's a good thing, right? All of us are living in this world, right? And this world is a very materialistic world. And the truth is, I think more than any comparison you can bring, is modern man is very much like a turkey. Yeah? And the more the society develops technologically, the more computers develop. So man becomes more and more turkey-like, right? In that we rush around in a fury, right? I remember my early days when I was an attorney in England, right? And in the early days, people would phone you up, and you'd say, "Okay, I'll get out. You want a document? I'll send it to you." Right? There's no other way of communicating, right? So you'd post it to him. He'd make some comments, and he'd post it back to you, right? And then suddenly, suddenly computers came in. First of all, faxes. No longer could you think about anything. No longer did you have time to think about what you were doing, but you had to react immediately. Everybody was sort of running around angry, right, in order to get things out before they even said the word, right? No one had any time. I remember people would ring up and say, I said, I wouldn't even know that. I've sent you the document. Well, where is it? It's on your email, right? I've sent it. I haven't looked at it yet. Well, look at it. Can you come back to me immediately? The pressure, right? And you felt like you were a turkey being kicked. Yeah, you were running around, but everybody was out. Everyone else was doing it. This was the world we're living in, right? And the Rebbe lived at that break of time, of technological time in the Industrial Revolution, when nothing anymore was slow.
Especially when you have to speak to machines on the phone.
You have to,
you can't
everything. But
you feel inhumane.
Exactly, exactly. And then, okay, so when you dial up, they say for this press 1, for this press 2, for this press 3, for this press 4, and you've forgotten what it is, so you press 3. Okay, now 3. If you want this, press 2. And if you want this, press 4. And if you want Hebrew, press 1. So you press English, right? 1. So you press 1, and they say, okay, now you want this one, and you want this one, and then what happens at the end? I'm sorry, no one is available to take your call. Can you ring back later? No? If you're lucky. Otherwise they can keep you hanging on for half an hour and then the line goes dead.
Exactly.
You spent all the money. So everything, it becomes dehumanized, right? We're living in a society, and this is the world the Ribono Shel Olam created, where the glory of the Ribono Shel Olam is no longer evident. It isn't here. We don't see it. We did see it once, yeah. Before we got into this world, we had a closeness and a perception of the Ribono Shel Olam, and a perception of the glory of the Ribono Shel Olam, which has just gone to us.
Why did the Rebbe pick a turkey? Hodu.
Yeah.
Hodu.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we don't deserve anything, like the Rebbe says. We deserve nothing. And that's what he was doing. He was under the table because he knew he deserved nothing. And he was thankful.
And I don't take that at all. I think at the end, I don't think he's praising the turkey. I think what the Rebbe is saying is that he's in many ways disparaging the fact that most of us spend our lives like turkeys.
Why pick a turkey?
Because the turkey is an animal that rushes round, right? Doing nothing, getting nowhere, appearing busy. And if you read, I remember looking up once on the internet or in a dictionary of what is the characteristics of a turkey, right? And it's very interesting. The turkey is an animal which follows other turkeys. You'll get them all. It says that if you leave a turkey in a barn with an open door, they'll all sit there. None of them will leave until one of them will get up. And then one gets up, they'll all get up and they'll follow each other. Isn't it like us? Yeah?
There's an expression. Sometimes a teacher wants to tell their students, some derogatory, you're a bunch of turkeys. There is an English expression like that.
I think very much that a turkey is also a very anxious bird. Right? Like a chicken, it's very anxious, It's not calm, right? You can get some sort of birds that will sit and they're very serene, and turkey is not. Modern man, it's incredibly anxious, right? Everything because of the pressure of time, because of the pressure of materialism, right? Because of a pressure to succeed, because of the pressure of believing that everything is in our hands, right? And that everything depends on us. So we are like turkeys. Most of us are spending our lives like turkeys, right? And we're under the table. What is the table that we're under, right? I think we're under the table of ego. Ego. self-centered. But that's what a turkey is as well. He's not really concerned what's going on. A turkey is very much involved in his own little world, rushing around, rushing, right? But involved in his own things, right? Turkeys don't relate to other turkeys. They don't relate to anybody, right? They're very busy and they're very anxious. And to some degree, most of us are cut off by our own selves, thinking about ourselves, not thinking about other people. And I think the table too is also a symbol of rationalism. That before we come into the world, we can see the glory of the Ribbono Shel Olam. We can feel the glory of the Ribbono Shel Olam, right? But we don't think about it, we don't have to work it out rationally. What happens in this world? We're under the table, and being under the table, we think this is all there is in the world, right? That's our world under the table.
You say it's the mechitza between the Kodesh Baruch Hu and us.
100%. This is the creative process. The Ribbono Shel Olam, in a way, it's like the Chol HaPoni, that the Ribbono Shel Olam created the world, where he is seemingly absent. He is there as well, but he's seemingly absent in the world, right? The Rebbe says this is the ultimate paradox, right, in one of the Torahs. But Hashem is seemingly absent in the world, so under the table. God, anything that isn't rational, anything that you can't explain and understand in terms of being under the table, doesn't exist. I think all scientists and all philosophers are turkeys, right? Because they try and explain what is going on in their world, which is our world, right? Only in terms of what's happening under the table. And they're not aware that outside of this table there is an enormous spiritual world. Worlds upon worlds upon worlds. We know that there are 4 worlds, 5 worlds, whatever it is, but even each of those worlds is divided into worlds. There's umpteen worlds until you get to Atzilus, and even then you can get above the world of Atzilus. Every world, right? There's a world of angels, there's the world of our world, of which ours is the lowest part. And we think that our world is all that there is. The only world that there is, and there's no spiritual world. So what the Rebbe is saying is that all these people are under the table and they think that's what life is, right? That's what life is. They think they're turkeys, right? But in truth they are turkeys. They act like turkeys. The Rebbe says in Likutei Moharan 21 that where a person thinks, that's where he or she is, right? If you think you're a turkey, you are actually a turkey. Yeah? If you think you're no good, then you're no good, because that's the way you'll act, that's the way you'll behave, right? The turkey too is withdrawn. If you look at a turkey, it's a very introspective, it isn't, and in this world as well, so many of us people withdraw into themselves because of anger, because of insecurity, because of hatred, right? So this is the modern man and women are symbolized by the turkey. And they're under the table because they don't appreciate that there's more to life than just what they can see under the table. Okay? Anybody got any points they'd like to or shall we go on a little bit with this? We've only done the first line of the story. So he felt he was crazy, right? And he says none of the doctors could cure him. The king was very upset. Okay, the Ribbono Shel Olam created the world, right? Sure, the king is the Ribbono Shel Olam, there's no question, right? He's also us, in a sense, in that part of us, right, goes under the table. whereas part of us is still above the table, right? The spiritual side of us is still above the table. The material side of us is under the table. The physical side.
We're blocked.
The physical side, we're blocked out, right? We don't see the glory of Hashem, which is above the table and is in under the table, but is not clear under the table. Okay, so the doctors couldn't cure him. The truth is, why could the doctors not cure him? To some degree, we're not told. Just in the same way as we're not really told, and we'll come on to that, how the wise man cures the turkey prince.
Or who is the wise man?
What?
Or who the wise man is.
No. Well, the wise man, I obviously is the tzaddik, right? But we're not told how he cures him.
Well, he showed him that you could be.
He told him that, but why should it cure him? We're not told how he cured him at all. He just told him. He said, "Don't think that just because you're a turkey, you can't put on royal clothes or put on clothes." How does that cure him? We're not really told how he cures him. And this is what I'm coming back to. That this whole world is a mystery. How the tzaddik operates is also a mystery.
Another question is, why do we have to be under the table? Why do we have to start off this way?
The Rebbi Shalom wanted us to get out from under the table. It's part of God's plan, is that we should realize that even under the table, in this physical world in which we're living, the God is there, right? The God is there. We have to reveal God in the world. That's our tachlis in life. To megala the malchus of the Rebbi Shalom, right? That's our tachlis in the world. And that our greatest pleasure is to do that. That's the simcha that we have. The simcha that we have is by recognizing that God is here. Hashem is here, is there, everywhere, right? As you all say, that's our simcha, right? And that will be our great simcha, right? To appreciate that God is here, up and down, here and there, right, left and everywhere, right? That will be the great simcha. And when we come to the next world, right?
No, we have to work at it.
Yeah, because it's like listening, lahavdil is like listening to music, right? You can get two guys, one can listen to the music of Bach, or Beethoven, or Schubert, right, or anyone, right? And he can get tremendous nachas from it, right? Another person will hear it, and he'll hear nothing. Two people can be sitting in front of the greatest painting in the world. One of them just sees it as a boring picture. The other one appreciates, wow, what an amazing hand that he's painted. You know, the work that went in to produce the sinews and the chokhmah and the greatness of the artist, you know? And another word from the thief and said, yeah, but you could have taken a photo, it'd be just as easy, right? It's a question of one's mind, where one is and how one sees it. So, well, where is that? Yeah. So the doctors, let's come back to the doctors. The doctors, I think, attempted to cure him because they intended, and what most doctors do, to apply the rules of the game that apply under the table. And the rules of the game that apply under the table are the rules of rationalism and bureaucracy. Yeah, I go to the doctor before you've even finished telling him what's the matter with you, right? He's got his pen out and he's already looked up what drugs there are available, right? And he's written you a prescription, and you've had your 10 minutes or your 5 minutes or whatever it is. All of life is like that. People are too busy to know you, to love you. And I think this is one of the inyonim of what's going on under the table. That the under the table is a rationalistic, selfish life. That if you pay people, you'll get something back in return, right? but there's a lack of love under the table. And I think what brings the wise man to the prince is that he loves him. He loves him. And he wants to have a relationship with him, right? And you'll see that everything that we deal with in terms of the way the prince is looked after by the wise man reflects a love, a real love, a love of who he really is, what he can achieve, an acknowledgement by the prince doesn't love himself, right? He loves himself in a certain way, right, because he's selfish, but he doesn't have a real love for himself, right? I think as people said, he has a lack of self-esteem, which is certainly true, as most people do in this world, because there's always somebody better off than you are. And we're brought up very much to have this lack of self-esteem, a sense of insecurity, right? And because of that, people try to pump themselves up, right? They pump up their ego. So the wise man comes around. The wise man's the tzaddik. Anyone can doubt who the wise man is. The wise man is the tzaddik. And maybe all the other doctors were also wise. But there's a level of tzaddik who is able to cure people who are further down under the table than anybody else, right? And the wise man is confident. He says, I will cure him. Wow. You may think that this is a bit of a guyver here. Here he's coming along. This guy is a wise man. He's not even a doctor. And he says, I can cure him. But he knew he could. Just as the Rebbe said on so many occasions how he can help us. It wasn't any sense of guyver. He just knew his ability to help us. Because he comes, the tzaddik, the wise man, is close to the king, right? Right? And he's still there with the king. Right? And he's able, the wise man is able to bring down to the prince under the table certain aspects of the king, of God, and make it relevant to the prince who's under the table. Just in the same way that the tzaddik, right, and the greater the tzaddik, is able to bring a perception of the glory and the wonder and the greatness and the simcha of being with the Ribbono Shel Olam to each of us. And wait 1 second, please. And the greater strength, the greater the tzaddik, the greater he is able to relate this to those people who are further and further under the ground. And in many ways, just one more. And in many ways, you can also think of being under the table as an analogy for every Yerida that you and I and everyone else in the world goes through. And that we need a tzaddik to help us out. Right? That we need the tzaddik. And how the tzaddik does this, we'll now go on and see. But please, yes,
this would be in the realm of kiruv, right? Yes. Going out to the ordinary, that's right. What we're trying to do today. Mm-hmm. To go on the average person, say you could come, or let's say an example about it, putting on tefillin, people wherever they are in the streets and everything like that.
But I think the Rebbe is also saying something more.
That's why, that's why people are attracted to the Rebbe, you know what I mean, that you find in Uman, people from all walks of life feel a connection.
Right, but I think also you have to appreciate that although he gets down here and he takes off his clothes, right, that this doesn't just mean getting next to him in a physical sense, right? Just in the same way, what he's saying is that the tzaddik can appeal to people wherever they are under the table. Just as the Rebbe Nachman's teachings can appeal to everybody, however high up they are under the table, or whether they're at the edge of the table, or if they're really, really right down. because he loves them. And he knows them, right? The greater the tzaddik, the greater his ability to understand each and every person. Reb Nosson writes about the Rebbe that when Rabbi Nachman, he said, met any person, he was able to see into the shoyresh of that person's neshama all the way back to Adam HaRishon. Now, I have no idea what that means, right? Every Gilgul that person had been through, the Rebbe knew. Yeah? So it's all very well our spending a lifetime trying to get to know our husbands or wives or children just a little bit, but we have no idea where they're coming from, right? We have no idea really when a child acts in like this, right? Or one's husband or one's wife acts like this or like that, really where they're coming from, right? We can sometimes say, it's because his father did this or his mother did this, but that's only on the surface. But what was going on in every previous Gilgul that made the person that they are today? But the tzaddik knows this. The Rebbe Nachman, and interestingly enough, I have no idea what the Rebbe is talking about. I have no idea what it means to go back to Adam HaRishon to see the shoyresh of a person's neshama in every Gilgul. But it's interesting enough, Reb Nosson then says, but for the Rebbe, this was a very little knowledge. There was nothing. It wasn't like a great thing. So we have some concept of the greatness of a tzaddik, who is on this sort of level. So what he does here is he starts a process of relationship. The tzaddik comes down and he relates to him, right? Which is exactly what our professionals and we don't do to each other anymore. We don't relate to each other. Even husbands and wives one of my areas many years I've done marriage counseling, right? And how many times, particularly the ladies, come, he doesn't speak to me, he doesn't relate to me, or whatever it is, or the husband says she doesn't relate to me, right? Or the children don't relate to me, or the children complain my parents never related to me, right? They don't. This is what he's doing here, right? The prince under the table is very isolated and he doesn't trust, right? He's insecure. He builds up these barriers right between him, and he acts like a turkey, but he doesn't trust. And what the Rebbe is coming down to show is, I know you, right? I know you, right? And you can trust me. Why can you trust me? Because I'm also like you. I'm also a human being, right? Now you may think that I'm a great tzaddik and I'm this, yeah, but I'm also human, right? In some sense, although we can't understand what the Yeridas or an Aliyahs are for a tzaddik, it's certainly not what we go through. But in some sense, even a tzaddik has Yeridas and Aliyahs. His Yerida may be to stand still for a moment and not to be rising. But he's saying, I know who you are, I'm a human being. I was also born of woman, right? I came into this world and I've had to struggle. I know who you are.
The image of God, that we were born, the image of God.
But he says, I also know that God is cut off from you in some way, because that's the nature of the world in which you're born in. I can sympathize. I'm not going to say here, do this, do the other, right? Pull yourself together, right? But I'm saying that I know how you feel. And what he's saying is that the two of them build up a relationship. As he says here, they just sat there for a while. He says, I'm also a Turk. What does he mean? He's not really a Turk, but he is, because we're all Turkish. The Turkey is the material people, right? That we live in a world, particularly today, right, where everything is rushing around. And this is where the Rebbe was born at that point of time where civilization changed more dramatically than that, and in the whole of history. Yeah, 1780s, the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, the rationalism of enlightenment, yeah, all came to fruition at that time, at the end of the 18th century, with the beginning of the 19th century, when mechanism came in, breakdown in personal relationships. And the Rebbe says, I know where you're coming from. You've got a friend in me, right? Just to quote a song, right? You've got a friend. So he just sat there for a while. And then he gave a sign. And they sent down clothes. What's going on here? What are the clothes that he sends down? Right? Now I know Avram Greenbaum in his book, I think quite rightly says that these are the mitzvahs and the Maasim Tovim and the Torah and all this, yeah. And I think he's right, but I think he's saying something else, and it may be a deeper level. That what he's saying is that let me give you something that is non-rational, something from God, something from above the table, right? That you can link up to and that can relate to you. And I think what he's giving him, more than anything else, is emunah. Above the table, there's das, there's knowledge of God, because they can see God. They're with the King, right? They don't need emunah. But under the table, where God is seemingly not there, all you've got is you've got the skies, you've got it is, right? Whatever it is, you've got the table, which is the top of the table, the skies, right? He's giving him a taste of God. And that taste of God that he's giving him is non-rational. Because the world outside this table is not rational. God, it's run by God. We don't understand it. It's rational from God's point of view, but from our point of view, it doesn't have nothing that. And also under the table, it's influenced by it. And all these people are fluffing around. The Turk is running around trying to make sense of the world, where they can't. They can never succeed. They can never make sense of the world, because they're leaving out the key element, which is both above the table and below the table, which is God. And God runs things the way He wants to run things. And you can run around and flap around and get into philosophical and scientific arguments till you're blue in the face, but you won't really understand what's going on. So He tells him, you can put on a holy garment. And he's saying, but I don't really believe. I don't know, because all there is, all I see around me is this world. I don't see God in the world. And he doesn't try and prove to him that there's a God, because that's rational proof. Is the way the world runs under the table. But he gives him something from over the table and says, just believe this. Just believe. This is a bit of clothing for you from above the table. A bit of a shirt, a bit of trousers, a bit of food. Just believe that God runs the world. How can I believe that? Just take it, put it on. That's what he's saying. He says, but I'm a turkey. I don't believe in all that. I'm a turkey. I believe that the world runs rationally, right? And that there is chas v'chalila, there isn't, that it's all rational, and that I can get to the bottom of what's running this world. And he says, how can I go from this state of rationality to this state of irrationality, a state where I can see the glory of God, a state of emunah, a state of betochen, a state of simcha, right? How can I get there? So he says, don't worry about it. Don't take it all on at once. Don't try and take everything at once. I tell you what, next time you can't find your keys, or with me, my glasses, just treat it as hashgacha pratis. Don't worry about the very big thing, about how people suffer, right? Just don't get into all this sort of thing, right? Just have simple emunah. Take something out from above the table. That God is king. And not only that, but you can be a turkey. He said, but I'm a turkey. Yeah, he says you can be a turkey. See, that if you have a look at it all the way through, the prince is only concerned that he shouldn't not be a turkey. That's what he says. He says you can be a turkey and put on the clothes. That's all what he's saying to him all the time, right? So most of us say, yeah, but I'm living in a rational world. I want to be part of the world. I want to have a job. Well, I don't want a job. I'm not trying to insult anybody by suggesting they should get a job. I don't want to do that. But whatever it is, I am who I am, right? And he doesn't really want to change. Although he doesn't even realize that he perhaps needs to change. But what the wise man is saying is, I know that as well. I live in this rational world. But let me give you some little bit of extra rash, something that's above rationality. Let me give you a bit of emunah. I'll give you this little bit of emunah. And what is that emunah? The emunah is that there is a king. You don't see it at the moment. There is a king. The king's above the table. And running around under the table, you've forgotten that there's a king. But if you just believe that there is a king for a minute, and that he can help you, and when things happen in your life, that these are caused by the king and his entourage sitting above the table, and they're affecting what's going on under the table, just put that on. See how that fits you for a little while, right? You don't have to give up. You don't have to give up. You don't have to throw away all your possessions. You don't have to throw away everything that you've worked on, right? You don't have to throw away all your science. You don't have to throw away all your economics, or whatever, for what use it may be. But you can hang on to that. But you can hang on to it with the knowledge that there is a king. And if you don't have that knowledge, just believe me. Believe me, I'm telling you that there is a king. Right? Just believe me. And that you can be as you are. You can be a turkey, because I'm also a turkey. But just have this belief that there is a king. Right? Now this is profound, right? Because he's not saying you have to go with your whole life with this belief in the Rabboni Shalom. It's not saying that. He says just put on a shirt, just in little things. The thing is, we can't. Most people do not live with hashgacha pratis. Most people don't understand it. Those people don't even try to live with it. Unfortunately, most Rabbonim who teach, especially the modern Rabbonim who teach rationalistic theology, or whatever it's called, have a theology without this. It's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything, right? So what he's saying, though, is just do it in the little things. And lahavdil, it's like running a marathon. I couldn't wake up tomorrow morning and decide to run the Jerusalem marathon. I couldn't even decide to wake up tomorrow morning and walk the Jerusalem marathon, right? You've got to start training. So instead of getting up in the morning and messing around, maybe walking to shul and walking back. So he says, okay, just keep on, walk a little bit further, right? Every day you have to build up. But my muscles are so weak, I've not used it. This guy's under the table. He's not used his betochen. He's not used his faculty of faith, right? Because he has no image of the glory of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Because he thinks he's a turkey, he thinks that's all there is, this turkey-like world. And this is what's saying, take it on in a little bit. run a little bit more. Okay, after a week of walking a little bit more, maybe you'll run a little bit more. Yeah, doing it slowly, slowly. Just in the same way the Rebbe talks in Likutei Moharan in Torah Bob about being Boki Barotzo, Boki B'shoy, knowing how to go forward. And the Rebbe brings in Pei Beis in the second Chelek of Likutei Moharan how it's so important that if you are going forward, that you have to go in degrees, slowly, right? It's not right that most of us just wake up and have this phenomenal belief in Hashgacha Pratis and the belief in God and all this. And it's something you have to work on. And we're knocked down time and time again. Yeah, every time something happens, right? So that, next time you'll not only get stuck in a traffic jam, but you'll get stuck in a traffic jam when you're trying to meet a train on time, right? So then you get it really, Rebbeinu Shalom runs this, right? And then, okay, so you may conquer that. But the next time you've got an aeroplane to catch. And if you miss the plane, there isn't one that day. If you don't get there, you're not going to get there. It's a question of building up slowly and slowly and working on one's emunah in the small, everyday bits of life, right? That's what I think he's teaching him. He's teaching him slowly, slowly. And in the world in which you're living, you don't have to cut yourself off from this material world, right? You don't have to say, I'm going to give it all up, right? I'm going to go learn full-time in Koil. I'm not trying to put people off learning full-time in Koil or whatever they do, right? But you don't have to say, in order to be a prince in the royal household, which means to acknowledge that there's a king, and not only to acknowledge that, but to acknowledge that I'm the son of the king. I'm the daughter of the king. That I have a special relationship with the king. And the king is concerned about me. Right? And the king runs the world for me. Each of us. Right? And that we need to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom for whatever it is that we want. But to get to that, you can still be a Turkey. You can still take part in the world. You can still be part of the world. You don't have to kill yourself. The Rebbe himself said very clearly, he said, when he was young, the Rebbe used to sort of go through certain mortifications and things, right, which the great tzaddikim used to do. And the Rebbe said later, if he realized the greatness and the importance of his spoidedus, he would never have needed any of this. In fact, it was even higher in order to change himself. So what he's saying now is, he says, do you think a turkey has to sit under the table? Right? You can be a turkey. He doesn't say you don't have to be a turkey. He never tries to persuade him not to be a turkey. But he works with what he's got. He's got a guy in this world. He doesn't say you've got to be an angel. He says to him, you are a man. You've got a whole background. Not only have you got a whole background, you've got a whole Gilgulim before that, which are making you what you are. And you've got certain payers, and you've got this, and you've got the other. Just slowly and slowly and slowly put on to yourself the emunah. Put on to yourself the mitzvahs. Perform and believe that there is a king out there. And if you believe that there's a king out there, you'll come to know that there's a king out there, right? You'll get up from under the table, right? Even because the table doesn't exist. It's a world that we live in, but it's only you are where you think you are. If you want to walk around in Gan Eden whilst you're here, and certainly in Eretz Yisrael, there's a whole shtickle of Gan Eden here, right? That's where you'll be in Gan Eden, right? If you want to live a life of simcha and joy, you can do it wherever you are, whatever situation you're in. But just believe that even though you're a Turkey, you're still a prince and a princess, that you're precious to God. Right? That's what he's saying to you. But you don't have to believe it all at once. And he's also, which he doesn't say here, but I think he's saying to him, don't think that you'll slip back under the table again. He doesn't say it here, but I think it's implicit, because we don't know if this prince hasn't been under the table before. It just says that he thought he was a turkey and went under the table. It could be that he's been up and down out of this table umpteen times, and each time the tzaddik has to come, has to help him out.
He says he was going to cure him, though.
Yeah.
Cure means cure.
Cures him, that's right. In the end, he cured him completely. We don't know what it takes, though. It may not even have cured him in this world. He may have cured it. We don't know where it is that he's cured him, right? He did cure him, but we don't know that. The Rebbe says that every minute of our lives is full of yeridas and aliyahs, right? A small. He may not go right under the table, but he may slip back towards the table. That doesn't mean he hasn't cured him. You know? So, what he's also saying to him is that there is a mystery. That the world is a mystery. The world isn't what you think it is, right? But what he's saying as well, and I think this is important, is that you've got a choice. Yeah, you've got a choice. You can be a turkey, and you can be a... It's not black and white. You can't say, I'm either going to be a turkey or I'm going to be a prince. That's what a lot of people think. That's why they give up. Right? Either I'm a tzaddik, yeah, or I'm nothing. And if I'm nothing, I needn't bother with anything. What he's saying is it's a grey area. You can be a turkey and still be a prince. Right? You don't have to worry about it, even if you slip. Okay. So you've still got, you can choose. Even if you make the wrong choice, whatever it is, you can come out from under wherever it is that you are. Right? This is what he's saying to him. Right? And that it comes, in my view, from the eitzes of the tzaddik. And we've got this today, right? The Rebbe has given us, he doesn't actually say how he gets him up. Right? It's quite interesting. He tells him you can put on all these royal clothes, right? But he doesn't specify what it is that gets him out of the table. What it is that it gives him the attachment to the tzaddik, right? But there's something about the tzaddik that enables the tzaddik to help him, right? And I think it's the same in many ways, in any counselling situation, right? I know when I was doing marriage counselling, individual counselling, that sometimes I would come out of a session with clients and I think, that's finished. I'm going to get a phone call from them during the week to say we're not coming anymore, right? I always was expecting that call. And they'd come back next week and they said, wow, everything's changed this week. I've had that. Everything's changed, right? I'm not saying it's going to remain, but we saw things clearly, and I have no idea what they're talking about. And I have no idea what was going on in the room that made them think that. In fact, I thought the exact opposite. I think what he's saying is also with the tzaddik. We have no idea what the tzaddik is doing with that. Once we get into a relationship with the tzaddik, we have no idea how he is helping us, right? And we have no idea really that he is helping us very often, right? Because we feel better, we feel worse, or whatever it is, but we're taking into ourselves something from the tzaddik, and we're emulating in some way because we're developing a relationship with the tzaddik, right? We're seeing something in the tzaddik, we're seeing something in the writings of the tzaddik, which are speaking to us in a way that nothing else has ever spoken to us. I must say that was one of the things when I first started going back now, how many years, 40 years, whatever, started getting involved with the Rebbe's teachings, right? In the 1970s, early 90s, is that 40 years? Yeah, over 40 years, right? That I suddenly saw something, I saw somebody who related to me, who understood me, in a way that nobody I'd ever met or spoken to understood me. And I realize now it's because the tzaddik was not only able to understand me, but he was able to understand where I was coming from and where I did come from. I remember in the early 70s, just at that time, there was a very famous pop song by a Negro called Roberta Flack. Anyone ever heard of her? Mm-hmm. She sang this song, "Killing Me Softly." Do you remember that one? It became a very famous song. And in it there's a line about a singer who was singing this song, a folk singer. And he said he was strumming me, killing. He looked inside, it's his words as if they looked inside of me and spoke right to me. Right? And that's exactly how I felt. Lahavdil, with the Rebbe. And that, I think, is what's going on in this relationship. He saw in his relationship with the tzaddik somebody who understood him. And he said to him, right, you can do this, right? Don't worry about it. Yeah? I'm also like that. I know what it is. You can rely on me. You can trust me. Whereas I've never trusted anyone in my life. Most of us are so frightened of trusting people. And we see somebody who can really trust. Why? Because he really loves us. Because God really loves us. And the tzaddik is bringing down to us the trust and the love from the Rebbeinu Shalom. See, it's 9:30, and I was told I had to finish it this time. I'm sorry I haven't got time for questions. I said it would be interactive. I seem to have done all the speaking. I apologize. If anyone has got any questions they'd like to ask, I'm very happy to take them now or afterwards, whatever you wish. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.